Hello there, and welcome back to the Codex. Today we have a delicious Xaku build to talk about that basically can't die, does tons of damage, and has infinite energy. So let's hop into that. First, we will talk about the very expensive Archon Shards setup that I'm currently running on Xaku. So he's one of my favorite Warframes. I think he's one of the best frames in the entire game, especially for endurance content. So I think that he's highly worth the investment. So we're rocking 3 Tau Forged Ability Duration Shards for 45% extra duration, 1 Tau Forged Ability Strength Shard for 15% more strength, and then 1 Tau Forged Casting Speed Shard for that extra 37.5% casting speed. Now, if we hop into the actual build here, why the 1 Strength Shard instead of making that 4th Crimson also duration? Well, it's because if you didn't have a Strength Shard on, this build would be at 139 Strength from just the mod setup. And 139 plus the 60 from Molt Augmented would only put you at 199 Strength. So you would be 1% strength off of getting that max 100% armor strip from Gaze, which is one of the abilities that his third ability, the Lost, is able to cast. Because it's baseline 50% armor strip, so you need 200 to hit that full armor strip. So of course, we want to hit that full armor strip. So you only actually need a regular Archon Shard to do that, because if you just put on a regular Crimson Shard for 10%, you would take it from 139 to 149, and then with the extra 60 here, you would go over 200. I just put on a Tau Force because, again, this is a full investment build, so why not? We took the extra 5% strength because we can. All that extra duration, plus the 155 that we're modded for, puts us at exactly 200 duration, although this build will actually be closer to 300%, as we'll talk about momentarily here. You can see the efficiency is terrible. It's 45% because I'm running Blind Rage and no efficiency mods. That will not be a problem. We'll discuss that. And range is the most important stat on Xaku. The reason why I have 265% range is for multiple reasons. The primary reason is because his second ability, Grasp of Loke, you can see it says max targets there, 15. That's referring to the amount of guns that you grab and have floating around you. When you cast this ability, you steal nearby enemies' guns, and they float around you, and they become like a spectral form of the gun that shoots enemies for you. It's aimbot, it does void damage. The amount of guns that you get scales with range. So the more range you have, the more guns you have. For example, if I were to replace Prime Surefooter with a Cunning Drift to go to 280 range, that would give me just enough to go from 15 to 16 guns, because it scales with range. So that's fantastic. I replaced Zada's Whisper, his first ability, with Resonator, so that huge amount of range makes the charm radius absolutely massive. As you can see here, it's 40 meters. So that's a huge part of the defensive capabilities of this build. You'll have a lot of people just not targeting you in the first place because Resonator is charming them. Also, the armor strip radius of Gaze is, of course, affected by range, so you have a massive 66-meter armor strip, and you're able to put 2 of these Gazes down. So if you have 2 of them set down in separate areas, you could have a massive overlapping field that's, 100 meters plus in terms of its total area. The Vast in Time is also, of course, affected by range. It's not very important, though. It's primarily because of the armor strip radius, the charm radius, and the amount of guns that you grab. That's why you want so much range. And then the strength, of course, to increase the damage of Grasp of Loke and get that max armor strip. So, how are we surviving on this build? Because there's no health mods, there's no armor mods. We're surviving off of multiple different factors. One, we have Rolling Guard on. So if you do start taking some serious damage, if you lose your shields, you lose that shield gate, you can roll. You get 3 seconds of invulnerability. You guys all know how Rolling Guard works. Also, we're using Brief Respite, Augur Reach, and I'll show you in a moment here, we're using 2 more Augur mods on my secondary weapon. So that is a lot of energy spent converted into shields. With this right here, comes out to 280%, and then, 180%, and then it would be, I think it's 280% with the 2 Augur mods in the secondary, because it's 150, and then plus 33 times. So 150 plus 90, so that's, what am I saying? What am I saying? This is, 48. Yeah, it's 120% because I have 3 of the Augur mods on, so it's 120 plus 150. So, yes, that is a lot. That is, what, 270%? Yeah, 5, 6, 7, 270%. Sorry, math is hard. So 270% of the energy you spend is turned into shields, which, with negative efficiency, that's actually a good thing because everything costs more. So even just casting Resonator here, that's 77 energy. So that's 77 times 2.3 given to you as 2.7, I mean, given to you as shields. And then especially if you cast Fast on Time here, 155 times 2.7, that's basically a full shield gate. It's crazy. Now, we are using Multi-Efficiency and Multi-Augmented for the two arcanes here. Multi-Efficiency is an interesting choice, doesn't go in a lot of frames. While shields are active, gain 6% ability duration per second, up to a max of 36%. This means that as long as we're not getting hit, this arcane effectively gives 36% more duration. So this is actually 236 duration, not 200. Multi-Augmented, you guys know about this classic choice, gives you 60% more ability strength, and that is what is allowing us to hit that 200% break point to get that full armor strip. So the duration does not end here, though. If we go over to the secondary, we are utilizing the Grimoire with the Riss Invocation. So the Riss Invocation is critically good for this build because it gives you alternate fire, increases ability duration by 4% for 20 seconds for each enemy hit, stacks it to 15 times. So once that's fully stacked up, that gives you 60% ability duration. So now with that plus multi-efficiency, we are at almost 300% duration. So compared to 200, we're increasing what the arsenal states is our duration here by basically almost 50%. So this duration, it says 50 seconds. It actually can go as high as over 70 seconds. The Grasp of the Look will last forever. The Resonator lasts much longer. So the reason why that's critically important on Xaku is because duration has a double dipping effect for how good it is on Xaku. Because here's the thing. Xaku's fourth ability, when you cast it, it pauses the timers on his first three abilities. Not the first ability in this case, guys. I replaced Zada's Wisp with a Resonator, which helmet abilities are not affected by that, so it's just the 2 and the 3 in this case. But when you cast his fourth, it will pause the timer on your Grasp of Loak, which is your damage ability, and the Lost, which is your Gaze armorship ability. So if you use the Grimoire, and you fire out that alt fire, and you get an extra 60% duration, you'll be adding duration to these two abilities. These will last 60% longer, but then also the ability that pauses their timers will be 60% longer. So that adds several literal minutes, like 5+ minutes, to the amount of uptime you have on these, because the original ability themselves is longer, and how long they're paused for is longer. So you're double dipping the efficacy of all this extra duration, like the duration you're modded for, but then this extra 36% and 60% from the Grimoire is basically applying twice in that way, in terms of how that utility stacks. So it's incredible how long that you can make your abilities last. And one of the reasons why that's so important is because if you take Xaku to a Fisher mission and you get corrupted, for example, the corruption for Warframes gives you double range and double strength temporarily. So that means that if you recast Grasp of Loak while you're corrupted, you'll get twice as many guns, which takes this from 15 to 32. And yes, it's 32, not 30. The reason it goes from 15 to 32, which is more than double, is because I'm close to a breakpoint where I would get one more gun, and that corruption hits that breakpoint and doubles what I already have. So it actually goes from 15 to 32 guns, not 15 to 30. So it would give you 32 guns and make them twice as strong because it's also double strength. And if you recast Gaze, you would get a over 130 meter range Gaze, because the base range is 66 and then doubled to, 134, whatever that would be. So that is a ton of range. And then you can pause that and keep that for a super long time, because you get corrupted, you pop your Grimoire buff to get that extra 60% duration, then you recast the corrupted values, then you cast the Vast in Time with, again, the Grimoire buff, and you keep those corrupted buffs up for way longer than you would typically be able to. So that's a huge damage increase, huge utility increase. Now let's move on. The primary choice here doesn't really matter a whole lot. The primary choice would matter if you wanted to, instead of using multi-efficiency, you could use Arcane Ice Storm, which is even better. It gives you 40% duration and 40% strength, but you do have to keep it up. And your Sentinel, I've tested, your Sentinel is not able to proc Ice Storm for you, it seems. So you have to actually use a gun where you're freezing people. So you could use something like Detonate Glaxion, for example, with like a Corrosive Cold build. And if you wanted to, you could slap on Shivering Contagion to make that stacking even easier. And if you wanted to do that, then you could. I would recommend using Ice Storm over Efficiency, because it's 4% more duration than Efficiency, and it also gives you that 40% strength. So we're just using efficiency because it's simplified. You don't really have to think about it. It stacks itself automatically, and you can use it with any setup. It doesn't require a certain weapon. But for the weapon here, I am using primary frostbite because this weapon does have cold on it. Even if it didn't have cold, the Sentinel build that we're going to talk about in a moment here has cold, and your Sentinel, if it does cold damage, is actually able to stack frostbite for you. So your gun damage, you always have that extra crit damage and multi-shot automatically, even if you haven't you yourself used your weapon recently. So that's nice. Again, we're talking about the Grimoire. The Grimoire is very important. Use the risk invocation for that extra duration. All the other mods is basically just utility. We're using the 2 Augur mods to give you that extra shields back from spending energy. Amalgam barrel diffusion instead of regular, basically just for that extra dodge speed is nice. Just extra quality of life there. And then everything else is essentially multi-shot and fire rate to help easily stack up that charge shot for the Grimoire so that you can do that alt fire and activate this invocation. Now, secondary encumber, this is on here because we're not doing damage with this weapon, so this is just even more utility. Whenever you do shoot at that alt fire, you'll get, a few extra statuses randomly thanks to this. So it's just some extra quality of life. The melee, use whatever melee you want. Do keep in mind that you're going to be armor stripping enemies. So I'm using the Zorus because the Zorus is already amazing. And then when you stack armor strip on top of that, it's going to do an insane amount of damage. It's also decent at killing the acolytes with the heavy attacks. So we're using that. Now let's move over to the companion. This is where things get really interesting. We are again using the Diriga. So this is the Diriga build that we're currently using. So there's a lot of bond mods on here, as you can see. Duplex, Manifold, Mystic, and Contagious bonds. First, let's talk about the main point of this build. Arc Coil. We're using Arc Coil so that he does the zapping special effect that he does. And that effect, when you combine it with Manifold Bond, Arc Coil will proc all of the statuses that you have on your Sentinel's weapon. So everything that you're going to see in the Sentinel weapon build, Arc Coil will proc this. We're also using Assault mode so that it doesn't just use Arc Coil, it also uses the Verglas gun it's equipped with, so it'll actually shoot guys constantly thanks to Assault mode, which forces your Sentinel to attack people. So Duplex Bond. This makes it so that whenever you spend 100 energy, you clone your Sentinel. They don't use abilities, but we are spending over 100 energy very often thanks to the negative efficiency of the build on the Warframe. So you'll constantly have these clones going out. And each of these clones, up to 3 clones, will also be using your Verglas, which again, once you see the build, you understand why it's important. And if they do actually kill anything, they drop energy orbs, so that it helps. Manifold Bond. This is critically important to the build. This makes it so when you kill enemies that have 3 or more statuses on them, which is going to be basically every enemy you kill, it reduces the cooldown of your Sentinel's abilities. This means that it uses Arc Coil constantly. Mystic Bond. This you could honestly drop. So Mystic Bond, this makes it so that after it uses 5 abilities, you get 1 free cast in your Warframe. It just helps the energy economy even more. It's nice. Technically, it hurts the shield gating slightly, because then when you do cast a free ability, you're not getting shields back, because you didn't spend any energy. But for the most part, it's not a problem. But you could replace this if you wanted to. Contagious Bond. This is good if you have a Sentinel build that's actually able to kill stuff, because it makes it so that when your Sentinel kills an enemy with status effects on them, you share half of those statuses to nearby enemies. So it just further propagates the extreme status spreading that your Sentinel's able to do. Synth Deconstruct, this is important, because as you saw in my Xaku build, I have Equilibrium on. So Equilibrium plus Synth Deconstruct and your Sentinel firing arc coils everywhere and shooting everywhere and having clones shoot everything. Basically, every enemy is going to be impacted by your Sentinel, so they all will have a 25% chance to drop a health orb. And thanks to that, you will get tons of energy from the Equilibrium on the build here. So, infinite energy, basically. That's pretty much, obviously, and we're using Vacuum, of course. Vacuum, Primed Regen, Primed Animal Instinct, the basic mods that you need on basically any build. So yeah, that's the Sentinel build. Now, the Verglas. I will right off the bat say I do have a ribbon on my Verglas. I actually just got this right before recording this video, because I saw this. It was fairly cheap, and this is disgusting. This is basically just a way better version of Rhyme Rounds, because as you can see here, it's status, chance, and cold. But it also has that extra status duration of almost 100%, which is disgusting, because it means that the enemies will be frozen for twice as long, they'll be attacking each other for twice as long from the radiation procs, and those clouds will last twice as long, just about. If you don't have a Riven, this would usually be Rhyme Rounds, just the regular cold mod. I'm using a gas, radiation, cold setup. That's really good, because that means that even if I don't shoot enemies at all myself, this build has 3 statuses on it, so that you can trigger the Manifold Bond, which requires you need to kill enemies with 3 or more unique statuses on them. So even if you're Xaku, you're just killing enemies with your guns, your Grasp of Look, which don't proc any status, you'll still be hitting that 3 statuses on an enemy to get that ability cooldown for Arc Coil. So yeah, this build is disgusting. The reason why we are using 2 Galvanize mods, for those of you that aren't aware, companions are not able to trigger Galvanize mods, but if you trigger them, they do benefit from them. So if you are using a primary, and your primary has Galvanized Chamber and Galvanized Aptitude on, which in this case my Tenant Galaxion does have both these mods on, if I get kills with my Galaxion, and I build up my own stacks of Galvanized Chamber, Galvanized Aptitude, then the Sentinel weapon with the same mods equipped also benefits from it. So you are able to give that 230% multi-shot and that extra damage against enemies that have status on them from Aptitude, as long as you are stacking it yourself. And put my ribbon back on just because it's delicious, and I'll showcase that. And yeah, so let's go hop into an actual mission here and showcase how glorious this build is. Alright, here we are, loading into the Kuva Fortress. You'll see here at the top of my screen, I have that 36% extra duration for multi-efficiency. So it's increased ability duration while shields are active. So as long as you're not getting hit, which is very common on this build because of the crowd control from your Sentinel and the charming from Octavia's Resonator, you'll keep that extra 36% duration. Let's go ahead and drop an energy pad, start up the mission here. The first thing you want to do is go ahead and drop that Resonator to start charming enemies. You can do a rolling guard to keep yourself safe at the start here. Fire off the alt fire of that Grimoire to get that extra 60% duration. Then pop your 4th ability, pop your 2nd ability, gather up guns, and look at how long that duration is. It's much longer than the duration that it stated in the arsenal. Yeah, look at all these frozen guys around me. Let me go ahead and get some kills with my Galaxion so I can actually charge up my Sentinel with those Galvanized Aptitude and Chamber stacks. And then you will see how actually absurd your Sentinel is at crowd control and even being able to kill guys. Let's pop my 3rd ability here. We'll rotate the ability to Gaze, which is the armor strip, and drop that down. Now again, we don't have a full armor strip yet because we have to get our Molt Augmented stacked up. If you want to skip part of that process, you could throw down a Nidus Spectre, and they'll link to you with Parasitic Link and give you a 1.28x multiplicative strength increase so you can hit that 200 strength earlier, rather than having to wait for your Molt Augmented to stack most of the way up. Let's go ahead and head over to where that first harvester is, and just look at how gross this is. So right there, I didn't use the book, so it's only about 58 or so seconds on that 4th ability. Let's go ahead and fire the book out and recast that, and you can see, boom, 73 seconds. So that's a real nice duration increase when you use that Grimoire. It makes you so you can keep your guns, again, way longer, because look at the timer on the 2nd ability. At the bottom of my screen there, you see it's stuck on 33, and on the Gaze up there, it's stuck at 37. It's because those timers are paused by your 4th ability. So again, making those two abilities last 60% longer, and also making the pause on them last 60% longer is a huge utility increase for this build. And a huge damage increase, again, because if you get corrupted, that means you can keep that corruption longer. That's fantastic. Let's go ahead and put one of these in, and we'll show how ridiculously easy it is to protect a Harvester in this build, because we have enemies charmed by the Resonator, we have being shot and frozen by the Sentinel, we have our own damage with whatever guns you decide to use, we have the Grasp of Loke shooting everything. Let's go ahead and drop down another armor strip here. You can see it's almost a full armor strip. That guy barely has any armor left. Absolutely delicious how good this build is. You can see there's so many enemies around me just getting frozen constantly. If you look at the top of the screen here, you can see this primary Frostbite, which is my Arcane on the Galaxion, is constantly being refreshed, because since there's cold on my Sentinel weapon, that is able to trigger Frostbite. So it keeps your weapon Arcane constantly stacked up all the way, so you don't even have to think about it. Absolutely absurd how good this is. Another thing you can do to get some of that strength you need sooner is you could use Vatterai. You could use Matterai and pop that Void Sling buff, and then cast your abilities. And thanks to that extra 40%, you'll get to that 200 cap much sooner. You can see now I'm full armor stripping thanks to that. Let's go ahead and grab another core over here from this guy. And I'm going to go do the hard harvester here. This one is in one of the most exposed spots, and I guarantee you it's still not going to die. Another thing you can do with Matterai is pop that Void Strike once the Acolyte spawns in to get yourself a huge damage bonus. And then mess up that Acolyte with something like a Glaive when they spawn in. Yeah, it's just so easy, guys. Go ahead and grab all this air over here. Yeah, so as you can see, this build is disgusting. It has infinite energy. It has fantastic damage. We just got our multi-augmented stacked up all the way. So actually, what you want to do is hop off the map here. Let me go ahead and pop the Grimoire. So we'll pop the Grimoire buff. We'll get that 60% duration, or as much as we can get. There we go. We hit the 60. Kill this guy so he stops trying to kill the Harvester. And there we go. I jumped off the map on purpose there. Now recast the third ability. Sorry, your second ability, I mean, to get those stronger guns. Now that I have that 60% strength for multi-efficiency. Keep the Resonator down, keep everybody charmed, pop that armor strip, and let's just watch everybody die. It's so delicious. This is one of the best endurance setups that you can use. That fourth ability on Xaku, by the way, also gives you 75% dodge chance. So most shots that enemies fire at you are missing in the first place. On top of Rolling Guard to keep you safe, on top of your Sentinel freezing them, on top of having shield gating. Good luck dying. Now, you might die if you let that Jade Light sit on you for too long. But otherwise, you are basically immortal on this build. Anyways, that's about it, guys. Not much more to say. We've gone over pretty much the whole build in depth. I hope you have enjoyed. I highly recommend trying out Xaku. Also, Xaku Prime is coming out soon here. I'm pretty sure. That's what most people are thinking. Because it's about time in the Prime rotation where it would be his turn. So you can look forward to that as well. Yeah, I highly recommend trying him out. Fantastic frame. One of my favorites. Amazing in endurance. As you can see, amazing damage. Amazing survivability. Easy energy sustain. It doesn't get better than this. Anyways, guys. Glad you dropped by. I hope you enjoyed the video. And I will see you in the next one.